Good morning. Rise in freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty. Austin, are you okay? Start over again. Good morning. I'm Austin Peterson. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. You're watching and listening to the 4 Liberty Network. A network, you say? Just, Austin, I thought it was just the Wake Up America show. No, last night, I think one of our other shows was causing a little bit of a stir just as I was heading out. Are you sleeping? Are you sleeping? Brother John? No, the Groypers are going to get you. I wake up today to an absolute poop storm. Nelson, 65, my local buddy here in Jefferson City, helps me set up the morning. He's like, did you see all of the comments they were making on Daniela Pensac's Culturama stream from the 4 Liberty Network last night? I'm like, as long as they're talking. They were calling her ugly. I'm like, bitch, what? Squeeze me? They were calling Daniela ugly in the chat. I'm like, that's a coat, man. Time to worry about such trifling things. I got big news to talk about on my own show. Pete Hegseth out for Secretary of Defense. Ron DeSantis in. I don't hate it. What I do hate, though, is what's the problem? Why can't Hegseth get across the line? They're attacking him. We expect that they're going to attack him. They're accusing him of all the same things that they accused Donald Trump of. Anonymous sources are coming out saying Pete Hegseth has alcohol on his breath. 19 non-anonymous sources are coming out saying, I never smelled alcohol on Pete Hegseth's breath. But by the way, I'm pretty sure drinking alcohol is legal, right? Are they accusing him of being an alcoholic? So anonymously, they're accusing him. It's all this anonymous accusers. But the word on the street is, at least the rumor is, and if it's big enough to be published in the Wall Street Journal, I will talk about it here on the show. And that is that the conversations are being had to take Pete Hegseth out of the running for the Secretary of Defense, which admittedly was a big job for someone like Pete Hegseth, who, although had an illustrious military career, was not seen necessarily as someone who might have the administrative capabilities that would be necessary to accomplish such a task. It is basically, it's the biggest part of the budget, and there has to be, apparently the senators that we elected with a mandate, it's not such a mandate after all. They're going to step out and say, oh, we're not going to let you have Matt Gaetz. We're not going to let you have Pete Hegseth, right? It's the Republicans that are our worst enemies. You know what I'm saying? It's the Republicans who are being our biggest pains in the ass. Well, they better not pull this shit with Tulsi Gabbard. They better not pull it with Kash Patel. They will try it with Kash Patel. They will try it with Tulsi Gabbard. They will try it with, who else? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. We're going to fight him. We're going to fight him and we're going to win, baby. We're going to have to get our people across the finish line, and we need to stop surrendering before things go through. You know, if you're really innocent, then, face up, face the music, right? Face whatever inquiry it is, face the Senate hearing. I mean, you think Clarence Thomas didn't back down? Remember what Joe Biden did back in the day with Clarence Thomas, and there was all the accusations. Did you put a pubic hair on top of a can of Coca-Cola, Clarence Thomas? I mean, we're talking about official Senate confirmation hearings. Clarence Thomas had to face far worse. Did you get back down? Here's the thing. Here's the real test for the nominees. If you back down before you face up to the Senate inquiry, here's what I'm going to say. And this is me maybe punching right a little bit, and we might even be doing a little bit of that later when we get James Lindsay on the show. I'm excited to talk to him about his latest hoax/prank, which is inflaming the right. We'll discuss that at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. Speaking of James Lindsay on the phone at 8:30 a.m. But when it comes to the cabinet picks, if you step down, if you step aside voluntarily, if you don't face up to the inquiry, if you decide, oh, we're just not going to do it, we're not going to have to, face a vote by the senators, it's not going to happen, you're not going to face the ignominious defeat in front of the nation in the hearings, same ones that Clarence Thomas had to stand up to. If you will not face that, then you know what? Maybe you really aren't the right person for the job, okay? So how about that? Good morning, everybody. 106 people in Rumble. It's just so exciting to have such a great crowd come and join us so early in the mornings. I can't tell you how many people will, like some of the bigger names and things that I try and book on the show. A lot of them are like, oh, I don't know, you know, get up this early, right? And then the ones who do get up early have their own shows, so they can't come on, right? But this is the sweet spot because this was how I built my burgeoning podcast empire. And ladies and gentlemen, it is working. It's working. Get your liberal tears mugs and your founding flavors coffee. I saw you guys in the chat talking about how delicious Martha's Mint is. You do not realize how much time is ticking and how Martha's Mint will no longer be available soon. You must get your orders in. You must go to forlibertyshop.com. You must buy your founding flavors coffee, your holiday flavors, the roasted chestnut, the Martha's Mint. For God's sakes, people, time is running out before Christmas gets here. I know you're like, oh, just do it at the last minute. No, there is no last minute on online e-commerce. I'm not Amazon. I can't fulfill the orders as fast as these big guys, right? I'm working on it, but it's not going to happen today, not this year, right? We're giving you great deals for Black Friday. We're giving you, it's the fastest shipping we can. All shipping is included. If you're in the United States and you want a pair of Afuera sneakers, like they just might get there in time for Christmas now. So get these freaking orders in right now. Go to forlibertyshop.com. And when you get a box of Founding Flavors coffee, you buy the Liberal Tears mug to go with it. And you enjoy all of our amazing products over there at forlibertyshop.com. Whitey White 14, Nelson 65, Sign of Jonah, Joni Rankin. Hello, Miss Weinbaum. Sign of Jonah, Barney Sutter, Dad Bod Baboon, Floby Tenderson, Grizz Cheese, C.O. Day, C.O. Deo, Deo, Daylight Command Me, Floby Tenderson, Day. Me say day, me say day, me say day, me say Barney Styles. Has every single name that I have read out clicked that like button yet? You better click that like button. No. What's wrong with you if you have not? No. If you want to text this show and let me know what's on your mind, you can send me one at 573-319-1586. I check those lines night or day. 573-319-1586. One listener texted in this morning, said the establishment wing, Bushite wing of the GOP is trying to undermine Trump's administration. That is definitely part of it, but it's not the full story. And because we have 2 hours, less than 2 hours at this point, I'm going to do my best to try and give you the full story. And many of you are going to be disappointed, I know already, by the conversations that I'm going to have with Judge Napolitano and with James Lindsay. And the reason why I'm setting it up like that, setting yourself up to fail in some ways, is because you have to understand that there is a time for a live talk format show. The way that I run this is like the Wake Up America show is like a bastardization of talk radio and television, the elements of both, right? And I've incorporated them into a 2-hour live show, which means that I do have time constraints, right? It's not like Joe Rogan or some of these other guys where you get this long 2-3 hour conversation. You go ups and downs and the ins and outs, and you dwell in the realm of nuance. I've got 20 minutes to get you the big story. Like, well, why don't you just extend the thing? Because this works. This works for me, okay? I'm creating a new format here, and people look at Culturama, watch Liberty Tonight, come back and check on me 2-3 years from now. You tell me, oh, we're going to have these 2-3 hour conversations with people. That Joe Rogan's already doing that. This is the Wake Up America show, bitches. I think Joe Rogan can get away with wearing a shirt like that. Probably. He's a lot funnier and more in shape than you. What's up, Cecilia? So fire it up, fire it up, fire it up. I'm on fire. Just like Joe Biden, who is lighting our last, on his way out of office, as the sun sets on his career and his life, he decides one big F you to America.
That's the right thing for the wealthiest nation in the world to do. And today, I'm announcing over $1 billion in new humanitarian support for Africans displaced from homes by historic droughts and food insecurity.
Boo! Boo! Boo, Mr. President. And so that's not it. That's not all. You think that's it? You want to see how much money they're blowing? They're admitting it, that the Biden administration and the current Democratic regime that's in power. They are throwing our money out the window as quickly as they can. I mean, every day they're throwing the bricks from the yellow brick road out the window. Listen, don't believe me. Look, here's James O'Keefe, or excuse me, Project Veritas, who is no longer with James O'Keefe.
Now we're just having to get the money out as fast as possible.
This is Brent Efron. He's from the EPA talking about the money that they're spending.
Before they come in and it truly feels like we're on the Titanic or we're throwing gold bars off the top hatch.
Who are the gold bars going to?
Nonprofits, states, tribes. We gave them the money because it was harder. If it was a government-run program, they could take the money away. If Trump won, and because it was a external policy against Trump winning. Until the Trump people come in and tell us we can no longer give out money. I do environmental, climate, policy things.
Really?
Yeah.
You did climate policy things. Remember, that's your money. It's our money. It's my money. It's the reason I'm getting up at 4 a.m. So, well, the reason I'm getting up, of course, is my sweet little baby Hazel, and my wife and my life. But in one day, I would like to, own nice cars and a nice house and stuff. But money. Yeah, it's your money. It's my money. It's our money. It's the reason I'm getting my ass up at 4 a.m. every single day here, trying to bust my ass in the freezing ass cold, trying to entertain you guys and get you to buy coffee and liberal tears books.
Amazing. Is that here? That stuff is here? I mean, because I do federal government climate things. Well, I have been doing that, but that might change. But
why?
So look at the EPA.
Oh yeah, you definitely don't work at the EPA anymore. Bye. They're taking every dollar they can get their hands on of our money, and they are just looting. It's like the last days of Rome. The barbarians are they're throwing in taking all the money they can. They're just filling their pockets as they leave. It is one of the greatest thefts happening in my lifetime outside of the Inflation Reduction Act, and that was Joe Biden too. Quantum Kitty gave me some money. She decided to bless me with something.
Can you bless me with something?
Oh gosh.
Money-wise. Please.
Can you stop it right before it gets there? Hey P, what's up? Thank you. She says, but people in North Carolina still don't have homes and still can't get help. Children are dying. People have food insecurity, but sure, let's send the money to Africa instead. Thank you, Quantum. I feel like you're my sister from another mister. Quantum has really been a big part of helping to support and grow the For Liberty Network. I got to shout out Quantum. Thank you. There's several of you, people like Quest Fanning and Floby and Frickety and Camellia, Andy Opperman, and all these people who have stepped in and helped made this podcast network successful. I'm just so thrilled. I'm looking at the analytics. I don't want to brag, but you know what? It's my freaking show, and I never do this, but I'm going to show you guys a little bit of the fun behind-the-scenes stuff. Do you guys want to see some cool behind-the-scenes stuff? You guys are fans. I got a million band clips. We're going to talk about Pete Hegseth. The judge is coming up. We got James Lindsay at 8:30. All right, let me just take a brief little detour here, okay? Just let me have fun. For God's sakes, it's the holidays. Merry Christmas. All right, this is because, so we brought on Brad Beckman. He works for me full-time. So excited. First time I've ever had a full-time employee working for me. I mean, I'm scared to death, right? I got to make those payments every 2 weeks, right? Government comes and takes money too. So it's terrifying, right? It's like, I'm trying to feed my baby and I'm feeding another man's, dreams and ambitions as well. So it's like, there's a lot of pressure on me, more pressure than there's ever been, but I'm excited. Brad comes in, and this is just one example, right? There's multiple networks, but let me pull this up. You can see it right there. Take a look. There's the analytics. Right, you can see I'm not getting rich over on YouTube. Like, because YouTube hates me, right? So this is just, we don't devote as much time to YouTube as we do to Rumble. We're all on Rumble. Rumblers, except for the ones who are on YouTube. But it's a new strategy. I have changed my mantra about how hard I'm working and what I'm doing to be more efficient and to really, not cut corners, but, trim the fat on the business and make everything work. But these are, a lot of these are just shorts and newsreels that we're cutting to pad our content. But it is, the rising tide is lifting the boats, right? The new subscribers, 315 subscribers, 833% more than the previous 28 days. That is, it's really exciting for me because honestly, when you look at the the analytics. Let's look at the views if we can see it over time. So that's the last 28 days. Look at in the last 90 days. You can tell when my daughter was born. Look at this. Okay, in the last 90 days, $291 on YouTube. So like some of this stuff, you don't get rich, folks, but here it is. You can see. Look at this. What do you think happened right there? Okay, this is the last year. Okay, Brad started right here. Okay, now look at all this. Even a year ago when it was just me and I was busting my ass trying to like get things out and do the same thing Brad's doing over here. But look, this is when my daughter was born right around here. And it was just, this is the last month of pregnancy and, holiday. And then boom, right there, your daughter is born. Womp, womp, womp. $88 after taxes. Yeah, exactly. So look at this. Their daughter is born and then Brad starts and we start kicking stuff off. Yeah, exactly. $891 isn't going to for a year. This is a year you made $891 on YouTube. Womp, womp, womp. But we're turning things around. And of course, my first channel is not YouTube. It's Rumble. We're a Rumble 4 community. We're on Locals. Yeah, don't forget the income tax, right? So Sign of Jonah, that's why he bought the Doge jacket to help support the show and because he wants to look like the coolest mother on his block. Eric Adams wants to be on the cool team, mayor of New York City. He wants to be on the cool kids team with us. He wants to be a winner. That's why he's saying things like this.
Those who are here committing crimes, robberies, shooting at police officers, raping innocent people, have been a harm to our country. I want to sit down and hear the plan on how we're going to address them. Those are the people I am talking about, and I would love to sit down with the Board of Czar and hear his thoughts on how we're going to address those who are harming our citizens.
You're open to that?
Open to? To
hearing what their plan is to deport some of these folks, and you think the city, in some circumstances, should cooperate with ICE.
Let me. You know what's interesting? And I was talking to the team the other day. I want you to all go back and Google Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Google what they said about those who commit crimes in our city and what they said in our country. They said those who commit crimes need to get out right away. That was their position. So this is not a new position, because in the state of in the era of cancel culture, no one is afraid to be honest about the truth. Well, cancel me. Because I'm going to protect the people of this city.
They will.
And if you come into this country, in this city, and think you're going to harm innocent New Yorkers and innocent migrants and asylum seekers, this is not the mayor you want to be in the city under.
And now I know you guys are like, too little, too late. He's not being ingenuous, Quest Fanning's like, thank God, over in the chat. That boy lives in Brooklyn. He's like, it's time for something to be done. So there's a lot of New Yorkers like Quest, man. They don't like this stuff. They want to see something change, right? They want to keep their communities intact. They don't like that violent crime from people that they let out back out on the streets 24, 48 hours later just to go and commit a crime again. That's how people get murdered, right? That's how things escalate because you're not punishing those low-level crimes, those offenses, and you're just letting people run rampant, roughshod over the citizens of your city. He knows that's a fast track to electoral loss, and maybe he's trying to cover his ass. The feds have been coming for him. It'll be interesting to see, if he's probably calling Donald Trump, begging him for a pardon as well. You know what I'm saying? Trump, please pardon me. The feds are after me. John Rail says, a lot of classy people in here every day helping out with AP for Liberty. Yes, absolutely, John. You're one of them, man. I was thinking about you this morning, dude. I was thinking about you this morning, the situation that you find yourself in, that conversation that we were having yesterday, and maybe we need to have just kind of a one-on-one conversation at some point on the phone. Just like, get on the phone, John, and just, talk things out for like 15, 20 minutes sometime in the near future. Would you like that, bud? We should talk. Appreciate all that you do for me, brother, and for our family. We're grateful for your friendship. Send me a text at 573-319-1586. Did you get my XDM regarding Penny's lawyer? I did. I don't have time to cover that topic today because I got to hit the big news. President-elect Donald Trump is considering Florida Governor Ron DeSantis as a possible replacement for Pete Hegseth. Yay? Or no, God no, boo, boo, boo. How do you feel about that?
Please, no!
I could see you going either way. You don't want him to leave Florida, for example. You think he's a terrific governor, and this might be a situation where you don't really get to see the benefits of what he's doing legislatively. But if there's somebody who can unwoke the military, I think Ron DeSantis is the guy for that. Florida would be at a loss because it would really be difficult to find a good replacement for Ron DeSantis. Thankfully, Disney World land is basically conservative territory these days. They say in even like some of the bluest districts in Florida, it's just been overrun by Donald Trump supporters. Palm Beach right now, you can't go 6 feet without seeing a red MAGA hat on like a hot chick wearing, like, for whatever reason, a bikini with a mink coat on top of it. You know what I'm saying? That style. And she's got like, it's like the plunge bikini where you can see almost all the way down to like, and maybe she's got a lot of plastic surgery, but that's what it is. Why aren't you clicking the like button yet or clicking follow? You're going to enjoy this show if you've never watched it before. You'll come back tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Central, say, thank God I found Austin Peterson and the Wake Up America show because I get the news and it's fun. And we're optimistic, and we always love to own the libs. Get your crying liberal tears mug at forlibertyshop.com. Look at these sad faces here.
Here we are.
Should we do thumbs up?
Just get in a little more. Here we are.
Here we are, right? Should we do thumbs up? Chuck Schumer asks. Amy Klobuchar says, what? No, we should not. Should we smile, and should our eyes smile too, or like just our faces? Have you guys ever seen that? You know what it's like when you do like the fake smile where it's like this? Watch this. Watch my face, guys. Watch me do this. This is how a politician, like, this is how they're smiling. Here we go. Hold on, let me blow myself up a little bit. There we go. Get a little bigger. Here we go. This is the politician smile. Watch me. Here we go. Ready? Yeah, well, I gotta get into my character here. Right. Versus this. Hold on. All right. You know what I'm saying? It's like the smile reaches all the way. All right. There's a big thing. Versus, and like there, I look like I'm going to freaking kill you. It's like, run away. Should we do the thumbs up? No, we should not. They're not feeling that great these days. They keep getting trounced on their own network, on CNN. They're actually losing the game, as Scott Jennings, the resident conservative over there, says and does things like this.
I don't want to be bringing back waterboarding. I don't want to be a country that tortures people, especially if we're the kind of country that's going to be using the military against our own citizens.
Well, wait,
this kind of thing concerns me.
What do you mean use against our own citizens?
I'm talking about
sending... You said blue states behave. What do you mean? What are you talking about?
I'm talking about sending the military into blue states to make them behave. Getting Gavin Newsom under control, getting J.P. Pritzker under control.
What are you
making
talking about? What do you mean? Like sitting into the state capitol to commandeer the state government?
I hope not, but he's definitely talked about that. I don't know why you're acting like you've never heard this before.
Using the military to suppress, in the Black Lives Matter era, those protests in the street. He
was there himself.
I just make sure I understand your position. That you believe Donald Trump is going to use the military to set up effectively like coups in state capitals of states that he didn't win?
I think you're taking it a step or two.
No, she said make blue states behave, and she also said round up immigrants. That's not true. Well, it's deport illegal immigrants.
Scott, I think you just Scott, I don't know why you're acting. No.
Okay. Well,
I'm sorry.
Hold on. I mean, look. I think you're right. Let's be precise. Trump has wanted to use the military to do things domestically that actually the military is not allowed to do. I think that's the point that she's making.
Like what?
Like deport illegal immigrants. That is actually not a function of the military.
The military can absolutely be used to work with local officials to provide military resources, but working with other parts of the federal government and local officials. We already send the National Guard to the border.
Not against the will of the local officials or the will of the state government.
We have
a federalist government here.
The military.
Oh, now they're talking about federalism. Civil liberties. Wow, it's amazing. Have you ever noticed that the only time that politicians or the left or even many on the right, have you ever noticed that the only time that they take libertarian positions is when it benefits them or it benefits their argument or it protects their own protected class that they're going for? Have you ever noticed that that's the only time that they really sound like libertarians? Isn't that interesting? Right? They suddenly, now that they're no longer in power, they suddenly talk about their minority rights. It reminds me of that quote from Doom. When I'm out of power, I ask for freedom. When I am weaker than you, here we go. Children of Dune, when I'm weaker than you, I ask for freedom because that is according to your principles. When I am stronger than you, I take away your freedom because that is according to my principles. Frank Herbert. That's how they operate.
Is not supposed to take up arms against American citizens. Period.
They're not. You keep saying that. This is about illegal immigration. You all keep saying American citizens.
Well,
it's
how do
about
we
illegal
know whether the people are illegal or not?
Well, we
know after they're shot.
We have 1.6.
We know after they die.
We have 1.6 million people in this country
Scott,
who've already
you're
received deportation orders from courts. They are here illegally.
No, it's always back to illegal immigration with people who support Donald Trump. It's always back to illegal immigration. But that's not the only thing that we're talking about here. We're talking about the American people. We're talking about taking up arms against them with a military that's supposed to be protecting them.
This is not right. You cannot say Donald Trump is sending the military to round up.
That's what he said.
That's what he
said. That's not what I'm saying.
Totally false.
He said that.
Totally false.
That's what he said.
Scott, Trump.
We're in the fever swamps, Andy. I'm sorry.
What is
if
your?
You want people to watch CNN, get more of this guy. Get this guy, whoever this Scott Jennings guy is. Get him, Scott. It's so much fun. Yes. I'm excited to talk to Judge Andrew Napolitano this morning, but a little confused. He says that the Hunter Biden pardon by Joe Biden was cool and good. Squeeze me?
No, God, please.
I'm sorry. If your first time watching the show is today, why don't you click the follow button, come back and join us Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. At 8:30 this morning, we're going to speak to James Lindsay. James Lindsay wrote an article. He kind of got famous, blew up because he he submitted portions of Hitler's Mein Kampf to leftist periodicals and journals that are supposed to be very carefully fact-checked. And then they got published and it became a big story. John Stossel did a whole interview with James Lindsay. He became this hero of the right because he showed that the left accepts fascist or Nazi ideologies. Despite the fact that they claim to be these leftists and progressives and social liberals. And so James Lindsay becomes a hero of the right for that. He's been doing battle with what he calls Christian nationalists over the previous few months in the run-up to the election. I think it was a bit of a distraction timing-wise, but I don't necessarily disagree with many of the fundamental claims James Lindsay is making. It will be interesting to have a conversation with him this morning at 8:30 a.m. We are both secular right-wingers. He used to be on the left. I never was on the left. I've always been pretty hardcore right-wing libertarian type. Just, the parties. I went from libertarian to Republican, which I think, breeds less suspicion than the liberal Democrat who goes to the Republican Party. Although some of those people get lucrative jobs and even cabinet level positions, as we've seen. And here I am publishing a manifesto, forthcoming manifesto called Libertarian Nationalism, my definition of my ideology, and my throwing down the gauntlet, my challenge to the liberty movement to get better, to reform, to change their ways. It's, what is it, the road to Tarsus moment? No, that's a self-reflection. But what's the biblical story where it was in Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, right? Where it was kind of like, no. Was it Paul wrote the letters to the church to reform? It's like right before Revelations. Someone can please remind. It was like Paul's letter to the church. Somebody over there, check my biblical reminders there, please. Or I tell you what, it's for a better metaphor, perhaps. It's my Martin Luther Ein Minuten bitte moment here. Road to Damascus would be a self-reflective moment, right? Because there's like, Paul, Paul, why dost thou, or Saul, Saul, why dost thou persecuteth me? And then they changed his name to Paul from Saul. But then it was like this letter to the churches. But I think that was a later Paul who wrote the letters to the churches, like it's time to reform and it's the final days and Revelation is coming and the fire and the brimstone and 200,000 Jews will be saved in the end times. And, if they, when they accept Christ, and they're going to bring around the guillotines and they're going to cut off people's heads and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, it should be a delightful conversation with James Lindsay. Somebody's read all of the Left Behind novels. I grew up in a dispensationalist tradition, so it was very much, you're going to hell if you don't do this. And then, you read the Chick tracts and you just say, they don't even, most of the people that I kind of was raised, the tradition that I was raised in, didn't even think Catholics were Christian. They viewed them with strong suspicions. So it will be an interesting conversation at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. Paul was blinded on the road to Damascus. Jesus kicked his ass. That's true. But wasn't Paul Saul? Wasn't it Saul, Saul, why dost thou persecuteth me? And then Saul was blinded on the road, and he was like always trashing the church, and then God just kind of struck him down and kicked his butt. But his name was Saul, and then they're like, now your name's not Saul anymore, now you're Paul. Pretty sure. Burt Crash says the judge has been consistently more and more disappointing over the last few months. I'll admit I have had many profound disagreements with the judge in recent months. We really have, I think, hit something of a divergence in our views. And I very much I have changed certain views that I had, specifically on things like foreign policy. As I read more Ayn Rand, October 7th was a real eye-opener for me when it came to the way that libertarians view foreign policy. And I say this as someone who came into the libertarian movement with Ron Paul's smackdown of Rudy Giuliani when it came to the question of 9/11. But that's something that I've analyzed even deeper over the years. And I don't think the libertarian movement is ready for a conversation specifically about that moment, but maybe in the broader context, I think that they are. But there clearly is a hunger for a new libertarianism in the United States. There clearly is I think, too, an opportunity for many right-wingers who would call themselves libertarian if it weren't for some of these darker, more insane and more, I think, ridiculous and illogical, just immoral viewpoints that many libertarians, people self-described libertarians, refer to themselves as. The whole getting booed for not wanting to allow the sale of heroin to 5-year-olds should have been a real eye-opener, and I think it was for a lot of people. And I'm glad that I ran for president as a libertarian so I could go back and point and confirm that. But I don't really feel as if so much I've necessarily moved. In some ways, the world has changed. In some ways, the world has moved on. And as we grow older, our sophistication can increase as long as we continue to educate ourselves and we continue to learn. If you're not changing your minds on things, you're probably not learning. And as James Lindsay is also learning, if you're not pissing someone off, you're probably not doing something important. Am I right? I'm just warning you that the conversations that I'm going to have with the judge and with James Lindsay today are probably going to piss you off. You're probably going to fundamentally disagree with a lot of things that James Lindsay and I are saying. You're going to find yourself on the other end of these things. But I would invite you to keep an open mind, to stay with us. Don't allow yourself to be offended and then run away from a conversation because it's a dangerous conversation. You're going to hear something from someone that you like, some of you may even love me, and be like, I love Austin Peterson, I love the freedom, and then you watch that segment with James Lindsay, you're like, I don't like Austin either. Just remember old AP, right? He'll always challenge you. He'll always, ask difficult questions, even if people that I really like and I agree with on things, just because I really do care about the truth. I really do care about finding out what's real, even if it disagrees with me. Even if I find out that I'm fundamentally wrong, I'm willing to change my mind. That's a dangerous thing. A dangerous thing to change your mind, especially when you live your life in public. I live a fully examined life. If you've never seen the movie musical Wicked, highly recommend that you do it. I know, yay! But great show, great book, and I think an even better movie in some ways. There's a famous song in Wicked called Dancing Through Life, and it's sung by the young male ingenue Fierro, where he talks about his life of non-self-reflection, where he's living a joyous, hedonistic lifestyle. He's getting kicked out of one school to another until he finally meets the good witch Glinda. They have a romance, and then his alliances change as he falls in love with the Wicked Witch of the West, Elphaba. It is an important theme and story in our modern culture to consider how many people live unexamined lives. I know that for the real hardcore of hardcores who watch the Wake Up America show, you would never run away just because we have a different conversation of things that we do. But I know that there are some people who are on the fringes who maybe you don't know a whole lot about me, and maybe you already don't like James Lindsay, and maybe you really disagree with what Judge Napolitano has to say, but I would invite you to consider to stay and engage with us. Engage with these ideas. Don't run away. Don't be afraid. Don't do what the leftists do and retreat into echo chambers. Did you see what Bill Maher was saying to Jane Fonda the other day? I might even be able to find that video. I'm pretty sure I uploaded it. But Jane Fonda, they were talking about transgenderism, and Jane Fonda was unable to, she had no idea the concept of what Bill Maher was talking to her about. Oh yeah, here it is. Here it is. This is so good. This is so good. Hold on one second. One second. This is so good. This is so good. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Don't retreat into the echo. Don't be like Jane Fonda. Listen to this.
So I've never heard about men getting pregnant. It must be some part of what you call the far left that is so minuscule that I, who am...
No, Jane, it's not minuscule, and I'm sorry, you can't throw this back on us. I assume it's because you are locked into media that just never wants anyone in their audience to know anything sketchy about the blue team.
Well...
And that's...
I mean, I don't know. I read two papers, and maybe I don't. I should watch Fox News.
No,
I guess.
I don't watch Fox. That's too far. But you don't have to. I'm not going to torture myself.
Yeah, no. Well, that's funny and a good joke by Bill Maher, I will say. I don't think, isn't that funny how like the liberals, things have really changed because they don't understand that the right has moved on. Yes, Fox News is still big. Yes, it's still influential. But I see Fox News' surge as sort of the last gasp of the legacy media. That, it's still got big stars, Greg Gutfeld, but the future Greg Gutfelds, and Joe Rogan is bigger than Greg Gutfeld. We're talking about podcasts now. This is the world that we live in. The online right. She thinks that she needs to go and get opinions like mine. They don't have opinions like mine on Fox News. They're not having conversations about Christian nationalism and libertarian nationalism. You're not having conversations like that, right? You're getting the news and what's happening in the world and the reporting, just like I did earlier about, the Pete Hegseth stuff. And they're going to go into some of the details about that in a broad overview, but you're never going to kind of nail down, get into the nitty gritty like I am. And then even more so when you have a Joe Rogan and he is going 3 hours in conversations with Elon Musk. And we are really seeing a blossoming of ideas on the right. People like Jane Fonda, she doesn't even hear what the left is saying in terms of transgender politics. And think about, she says she reads 2 news sources, right? Even if she only read 2 news sources, it's gotta be like ABC or NBC News, and then like maybe one leftist periodical that is not like into the gender wing stuff, right? Let alone, if she's like, I have to talk to Fox News, I have to listen to Fox News. Honey, you're not going to hear what the Republican Party, the voice of the Republican Party, the voice of what's happening on the right. Babe, and there's some very fine people on Fox News, some of my old colleagues that I have nothing but respect for. Judge Napolitano, we both work there. But that's not what their conversation is. She's not even having the conversations on the left where she's hearing the gender wang, and they're talking about cutting off each other people's penises and all that kind of stuff. She's not listening. Apparently, she's not even hearing things like this apparently CNN is even one of her sources. Take a listen to this.
To a law that is banning this care for minors. So if Tennessee is successful, if the Supreme Court in essence sides with the government of Tennessee, I think that will open the door to the types of federal bans on this care, not only for minors, but for adults too.
For adults too, you think?
I do. And I think that's one of the things we should be really concerned about. We're hearing a lot about young people can't consent to this care, but it is their parents consenting to this care. And at the end of the day, we have adults who live as transgender people like myself, who have families, who are part of communities, who are part of this society. And if the incoming administration bans our health care, that is essentially excising us from this country.
Chase Strangio, thank you so much, and appreciate you being here.
You're not fooling anybody. You're not fooling anyone, man.
To a law that is banning.
Chase Strangio, what a last name, a lawyer with the ACLU. They're the one who will be defending the transing of children at the Supreme Court today. She argues that children must be allowed to change their gender even though they can't consent to it. What?
This care for minors. So if Tennessee is successful, if the Supreme Court, in essence, sides with the government of Tennessee, I think that will open the door to the types of federal bans on this care, not only for minors, but for adults too.
For adults too, you think?
Good.
I do.
Just to guess which state was the first state? Guess which state was the first state to ban transgender surgeries for minors? Missouri. 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 Yeah, we're the best. We're the best around. Nothing's gonna ever keep you down. We're the best around. Nothing's gonna ever keep you down.
Bow to your sensei. Bow to your sensei.
No, it's Missouri. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. I'm AP. We rockin', we rollin'. We're having a good time this morning. I feel like we're really covering lots of news and views. We're talking about lots of big, wide open opinions. You guys are seeing the clips that you want to see. We've given you the news that you want to hear. Speaking of Missouri, oh my God, let me just tell you how amazing it is. I live in Jefferson City, Missouri. It's not even the best part of Missouri. No offense to my fellow Jeffersonians. Missouri is full of beautiful mountains and trees and rivers. The Ozarks, it's full of good people who are kind to you. When you go to the grocery store, they will help you if they see you struggling with something. A young man will help carry an old lady's groceries to her car. And when you go in, you got wide aisles in the supermarkets, right? And you can fit 2 or 3 carts down them, and they got plenty of food as long as the food is cheeseburgers or ice cream. Here is Eric Burleson from Missouri says, abolish the NFA too. The ATF.
They often are enforcing things that are not passed by Congress, that are not passed by state legislatures. They're enforcing their own new rules that they've established. When they passed the pistol brace rule, they made tens of millions of Americans a felon if they did not remove the pistol brace from their AR-15.
Right.
You cannot tell me that this agency is a successful agency. They repeatedly violate the Second Amendment on everyday Americans, and then they have all these disaster, absolute debacles that happen from Ruby Ridge to what happened in Waco. You have the Operation Fast and Furious. This agency needs to go away, and we need to just let the states do what they are responsible for. Missouri has laws on the book to regulate firearms. Don't allow the ATF to come in and commandeer the sheriff and the police that you're paying taxes for to enforce their stupid rules that they pass in Washington, D.C.
Eric Burleson, the man. Eric Burleson is a good dude. I gave a speech to Young Americans for Liberty at my old alma mater, Missouri State University, Springfield. It was a couple of years ago. And Eric Burleson went out of his way on a cold-ass night to come all the way down campus and show up and listen to my speech. And I got to say, I was thankful to see that he got elected because he's always been one of us. He even came out afterwards and had drinks with us later. Very relatable guy. This is why you can say Missouri better than Texas and Florida, maybe a little better than Missouri. Just a little, though. Guys, don't be mad. Just the weather and certain other factors, right? We still have a lot of Dixiecrats here in Missouri who are Republicans that vote like Democrats.
No offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
Speaking of commies, Sheriff Chad Chronister, what a name, President-elect Donald Trump's choice to lead the DEA withdrew his name from consideration for the office on Tuesday, only 3 days after he was tapped. Sheriff Chronister from the Florida county that is home to Tampa was a surprising choice to run the DEA, writes the New York Times, the nation's top drug enforcement agency. While he had a 30-year career in local law enforcement, he had no experience in the geopolitical aspects of the drug war. Well, can't say that really is the thing that bothers me the most. This is a guy who, and of course the New York Times doesn't report on it, this is a guy who arrested a pastor in Florida for holding church. They called him a grandma killer. They said that he put his congregation in grave peril. He arrested a pastor during the pandemic. So I say good riddance to bad rubbish. Thomas Massey was saying we need to block the nomination of this guy. Out. Get the F out. And it's time for us, I'm sorry, conservatives, to abolish the Drug Enforcement Agency. Except for heroin to 5-year-olds. We have to stop the flow of heroin in 5-year-olds. And of course, the drug war itself would collapse if we did something like that. But it's, you know what, liberty, I think you guys are not ready for that yet, but your kids are going to love it. Way down in Louisiana, close to New Orleans, there comes a judge from the Evergreens. He wants to talk to us about Hunter Biden. He made a log cabin out of earth and wood. Go, Judge Knapp. Go to our commercial break. Sometimes, the theater kid helps. Sometimes it hurts, right? We'll be right back. Judge Napolitano says 3 cheers for the Hunter Biden pardon? What the F? What the French, Toast? We'll be right back on the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apeforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apeforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit apforlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
Good morning. Rise and freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. Thanks for getting up so early and joining us here live on the Wake Up America show, except if you're listening to the audio version later. We got nothing against you, but you'd have so much more fun if you got to hear the types of conversations that we're having on this show, live and in person and in the chat. So come here, join us live. You can do things like click the like button. You can also click the follow button at rumble.com/AP for Liberty and come back and join us 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. But Wednesdays are special because we call it Big Brain Time. This is the time for us to talk about the big ideas that are shaping the world. The stories, yes, but what's underlying them, the philosophical principles, the history that led up to these decisions. You can only have these kinds of discussions with the great constitutional legal mind of people like the host of the Judging Freedom podcast, Judge Andrew Napolitano, joining us live right now. Good morning, Judge. Nice to see you, handsome.
Morning,
where are you right now?
I'm at my office at Newsmax on 3rd Avenue in the middle of New York City. And happy to be here and happy to be on with you and deeply grateful for your gracious, as always, but today a little over the top introduction. I think you're kind of excited to see all the stuff on the wall of my office, which reminds you of the old days.
Well, yeah, no, it's because burned into my memory, for those who know our previous history of working together at Fox, burned into my memory is this is this picture of you with, of course, a white dress shirt and the handsome tie, and then the cityscape behind you. Of course, the time that I interviewed for the job, walking into your office, I was wearing a 3-piece suit at the time, and I remember specifically looking down at the cityscape as it was. This is where you belong, Judge, in my mind and my memory. So it's nice to see. Let's talk a little bit about the big news. Your column this week at judgenap.com, which appears every Thursday, is 3 cheers for Hunter Biden's pardon. Judge, take it away.
Well, my initial reaction to this was, what father wouldn't pardon his own son, no matter what the son had done, particularly where there is no harm and there is no victim, which of course brings us to what was he convicted of? Why did this pardon cause such a kerfuffle? The pardon caused a kerfuffle because the people complaining can't stand Joe and can't stand the son and think the son's personal behavior is so tawdry and so sordid that the presidential pen should not be used to absolve that behavior. But when you look at the charges against him, you have to ask yourself, are these crimes? Because the word crime or the phrase criminal activity has 3 requirements. 1, that the government making the behavior criminal has the legitimate authority to proscribe that behavior. 2, that the behavior caused harm. 3, that there was a victim. So in this case, there's 2 crimes. One is paying your taxes late, and the other is lying on a piece of paper used to induce the government to allow you to buy a gun. We'll dispose of the second one first, because under the Supreme Court's Bruin decision, you don't need a piece of paper from the government in order to own a gun. And what was the lie about? Whether or not he was using controlled dangerous substances. So the law today must reflect what it was in 1791, when you could smoke all the hemp you wanted and still carry your musket. Who smoked hemp? George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. You can't make this stuff up.
I love to think about George Washington crossing the Delaware after he smoked some hemp, or Thomas Jefferson writing. Maybe the words of the Declaration of Independence were penned so beautifully because he was feeling very hippie-ish that morning, but I don't know. Judge, so my understanding is that the concern for the pardon is more related to the interwoven web of complex relationships that Hunter Biden has with foreign nationals, specifically his relationship with a company called Burisma, in which the allegations of pay for play or of influence peddling go to the president himself, and that the pardon itself, you say 3 cheers for the pardon, but I say, wait a minute, is the president pardoning himself here?
Actually, Austin, the president has shot himself in the foot, because when you, if Hunter Biden were dragged before the House Oversight Committee last week and asked, did you funnel money from Burisma through your relatives into your father's bank account while he was the vice president of the United States, he could answer. I respectfully decline to answer that under the rights protected and accorded to me under the Fifth Amendment. Ask him the same question today. He has no Fifth Amendment right. By accepting the pardon, he waives his Fifth Amendment right, and he must testify to every question put to him, the failure to do which will result in incarceration. Now, let's say he is asked that question and he does answer it truthfully, and the truthful answer inculpates his father. 5 years is the statute of limitations. Those events would have occurred more than 5 years ago, so Joe can't be prosecuted. What remains of his legacy would absolutely be tarnished. He could certainly be impeached as a symbolic measure after he leaves office and Donald Trump succeeds him, but he can't be prosecuted. But the government can find out what happened with Burisma, were the Chinese involved, what did Joe Biden know, and how did he enrich himself? Did Barack Obama know that Joe was enriching himself? This is a potential. I didn't get into it in the column. My space is limited. I wanted to give a sort of criminal law, constitutional law 101 lesson. But the practical legal effect of this is a bonanza for those who now want to find out what the hell happened and who knew what when.
Judge, my concern with this concept of waiving your Fifth Amendment rights if you receive a pardon and then he's, compelled to testify is, how can that happen even logistically, and in the concept of how our rights work? The government can't compel speech. So even if he can't claim his Fifth Amendment right, if they were to bring him up to compel testimony, he could just refuse to say anything. I mean, the government can't force you to speak. So I guess I'm confused on how that would work logistically.
In your world and mine, where the right to speak and the right to silence, and the right to remain silent is a natural right, the government cannot interfere with it. But in the criminal justice system we have in the United States, if you're right outside this building at 3rd Avenue and 49th Street and you witness a criminal event and you don't want to testify about it because you don't believe in the criminal justice system, you like the defendant, you got more important things to do in your life, the government will force you to testify just because you were in the wrong place at the wrong time. So can the government force him to testify? Well, obviously, they don't use the means to force testimony that were used in the Middle Ages. But if he refused to answer and did not have a Fifth Amendment right, a federal judge would order him to testify, and the failure to comply with that would be contempt of court, and he'd be incarcerated. That is not pardonable, and there's no end to it, meaning he would be incarcerated. Ask Judith Miller, who refused to testify about her sources when she was at the New York Times. She was in jail for 83 days. the end of your incarceration is when they no longer need the answer to your question. So theoretically, you could be incarcerated for as long as the Republicans control the House, which at a minimum is the next 2 years.
It may be legal, Judge, but it sounds profoundly immoral.
It is profoundly immoral. It violates the principle that our rights are natural to our humanity. One libertarian-ish argument is that by your voluntary behavior, you have given up certain rights. So by participating in some criminal scheme with the father, he gave up the right to remain silent about it, and his entry into the criminal scheme. This is all hypothetical. I'm not suggesting he participated in this. His entry into the criminal scheme was a voluntary entry, and the consequences of that voluntary behavior is the loss of rights. I mean, your right to travel freely ends when you rob the bank. You have voluntarily chosen to rob the bank. The police arrest you. You lose your right to travel because you chose to rob the bank. He loses his right to remain silent because he chose to participate in this criminal enterprise. That's about the best libertarian argument or natural law argument that I can come up with in this respect. I don't know if Joe Biden understands the significance of the pardon because of his own age and mental degrading. I would assume that White House counsel told him the natural and probable consequences. What you and I are talking about, the Republicans in the House Oversight Committee surely know. I wouldn't be surprised if that subpoena has been prepared already.
You think that he would have probably not done this if Kamala Harris had won the presidency and expected that she would have done it for him?
I don't know the answer to that, but I do believe that this is the tip of an iceberg of pardons. All these people that Donald Trump and Kash Patel have been threatening retribution to may very well be the recipients of pardons by Joe Biden, which would actually be a good thing because Trump and the new DOJ and the new FBI should concentrate on solving crimes, not on creating them and not on retribution. I was asked the other day what I think the new FBI should do. Get out of the business of computer hacking, get out of the business of using FISA, get out of the business of surveillance and predicting crime, and get out of the business of creating crime. Now, in my real world, there would be no FBI because, as you know from my column, the Constitution only authorizes the Congress to enact 2 crimes, treason and debasing the money supply. How many crimes has Congress made federal? 5,199. It's where we are today.
Well, and that's why I'm looking forward to our next topic, Judge, which is a discussion of civil service reform. But first, because it's such a compelling conversation and I know people are loving it, I'm going to take advantage of that and their goodwill that you have built up for me. Thank you, Judge, and ask them to please click like on the stream and to share us with their friends and come back and join us tomorrow morning. Judge, we call this big brain time because you and I can have conversations that we can't have on other shows. And the next topic of discussion I'd like to set into the framework of American history, and that is the discussion of civil service reform. And my question to you is concerning what expectations we could have if, for example, Kash Patel were to become the head of the FBI. I don't know if he has the votes at this time, and I'm certainly curious about your thoughts on our former colleague Pete Hegseth perhaps being out, DeSantis being in as Secretary of Defense, but specifically in terms of civil service reform, Judge, and the historic example that I can point to would be that of Chester A. Arthur, who in the late 1800s passed a reform called the Pendleton Civil Service Act, and it essentially attempted to make the executive branch and the agencies of the executive branch at that time, of course there were far fewer of them, but of those at the time, more accountable to the president and to create a more merit-based system. That seems to be at least the spirit of the reforms that are being advocated for by many on the Trump team, such as Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk through Doge, for example, but then also Kash Patel at the FBI. This is a man who's read the JFK report, which I know you're very much interested in reading, Judge. This is a man who has said we need to de-wokeify federal agents, get them out of Washington, D.C. looking for jobs and have them actually prosecuting things like going after murderers and things like that. So talk to us a little bit about this, the reforms that you think should be done. If we're lucky and Kash Patel perhaps becomes the head of the FBI and is able to enact some civil service reforms in a way like Chester A. Arthur did, what reforms would you think would need to happen just using executive branch authority should Kash Patel get across the finish line? I mean, obviously declassified the JFK files, yes.
Right.
But
well, it's not just Mr. Patel that interests me. It's John Ratcliffe as well. I mean, in your world and in mine, in Thomas Jefferson and James Madison's world, or in a 2024 world animated by Jefferson and Madison, the whole part of the CIA, the operational part that engages in war, secret wars and coups d'etat to overthrow government, all of that should be shut down. Everything having to do in the FBI with predicting crime would be shut down. Everything that the FBI does short of a search warrant based upon probable cause of crime presented under oath to a federal judge, which is laid out in the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, would be stopped. In a real world, there would be no FBI because there would be no federal crimes. Now, Madison didn't suggest the country should be anarchic. He suggested that the prosecution business would be left up to the states. If you want to live in a state where the government is loosey-goosey about prosecuting, go to Massachusetts. If you want to live in a state where the government is more concerned about public safety, go to Texas. Texas didn't exist at the time, but you get my point, and you get Madison's point. And the idea that the feds would have to go to a state and ask them to prosecute is a check on federal power. The Whiskey Rebellion, I refer to this in my column of 1791 to 94. Today we would call them patriots, but at the time they were criminals. They were farmers in Western Pennsylvania who discovered ways to make whiskey inexpensively, and the government imposed an excise tax. Did Congress have the authority to do that? Absolutely not. Congress could only tax imports, or Congress could only tax the states, and the states could raise the money however they wanted. They resisted the tax. They resisted it with violence. They were arrested and prosecuted. 2 were tried in a makeshift federal court. The rest were tried in Philadelphia state court, because Philadelphia permitted the feds to acquiesce in the feds doing this. If Philadelphia had said no, there would have been no practical way to have prosecuted these people, and that's the way Madison intended it to be. By the way, 2 were tried for treason. How can resisting paying taxes be treason? They persuaded a federal judge that using violence against the tax collector was the moral equivalent of treason. They were convicted of treason, and they were pardoned by George Washington after he finished consuming his hemp.
Judge, so funny. I really love these conversations, Judge. They're so fascinating. And for those who appreciate American history and law and precedent and love to hear the names of Madison and Jefferson and others invoked in conversations such as this, I know that people really do get a lot out of this. So I'm thankful that you're so generous with your time. And I know you have your own very successful podcast called Judging Freedom, which I hope our listeners will also check out as well. Many discussions about critical issues of national importance. Judge, the Biden administration, they are throwing, there was someone who got busted by Project Veritas. I know James O'Keefe is no longer with them. And they're saying that they are essentially throwing gold bars off of the Titanic. It's like the last days of Rome, and they are taking every penny they can, every tax dollar they can and spreading them out, not to government institutions because they know that the Trump administration can cut that off, but to these non-government organizations, a lot of these grants and handouts, every dime that we have. Is there anything that could be done to prevent something like that, Judge?
You know, Austin, the Democrats gave so much executive authority to FDR in the early 30s, and the Republicans gave so much executive authority to George W. Bush in the early part of this century. In the first case, it was a reaction to the Depression. In the second case, it was a reaction to 9/11. That Joe Biden has inherited all that authority and has all that presidential discretion. Today, he's shipping $725 million worth of anti-personnel landmines, which are illegal in 160 countries around the world, to Ukraine. He's doing everything he can to spend every nickel that Congress authorized and to extend the Ukraine war so that it comes crashing down in Donald Trump's lap, not in his own. It's immoral, it's reprehensible, it's unconstitutional, but it's lawful.
Judge, I have one last question for you, one last topic before we go. I'm about to have a conversation with a young man by the name of James Lindsay. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he is a scholar who became famous for taking words and phrases and passages out of Hitler's Mein Kampf and sending them to leftist academic journals with the names changed and the affected group, the Jews, being removed. John Stossel interviewed him. He sort of became famous for this by showing that the left really does endorse fascism in many ways. It was very comedic. It was very funny. He became very popular for it. Well, in the last 3 months, he's devoted himself to a new cause, which is to take on Christian nationalism, as he refers to it. And in his fight, what he has done recently is he's played another hoax, where he has taken words out of Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto, changed some of the affected groups around, and he was able to get it published in a popular, not the biggest right-wing, it's not like the American Conservative or something, but more of those paleo-conservative right-wing types, the Josh Hawley types, right? The Christian nationalists who advocate for these views. You're a Christian, Judge, and I know you're very patriotic as an American. But I never thought of you as a Christian nationalist in a way, right? You're like me, you're a libertarian. You believe in liberty first.
Christian nationalism is very dangerous to human freedom. Very dangerous. But go ahead, please.
No, but I guess my question, that is really going to be my question, Judge. And I'd like you to kind of wrap this up as I get ready to go speak to James about this one. Because, of course, he has inflamed Christians who see him. He is an atheist. And they see it as an attack on Christianity itself. I see it more as an attack on this deranged perversion of it, which is an intertwining of religion and state, which I think makes, I think it sort of perverts Christ's message as I understand it, speaking, as a secularist myself. But you, as a Christian, please tell me your thoughts on this Christian nationalist movement and how you feel as a devoted Christian about it.
Well, I am an old-fashioned, pre-Vatican II, Holy Ghost worshiping, Latin Mass attending, Francis skeptic, Roman Catholic. So you can see the position that I'm in. But I also believe, as Jefferson did, in an absolute, total separation of church and state. The Christian nationalists don't believe that. If it was up to them, they would import their version of Christianity into positive law and would require compliance with it. An example of a Christian nationalist is my former friend and former colleague, soon to be the ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, who thinks that the Old Testament should be interpreted literally, and that Bibi Netanyahu and his buddies actually own all the land from the river to the sea, and there's no discussing anything with them. On this side of the Atlantic, they believe in a conformity to Christian principles. Well, even Christ recognized that we have the freedom to make our own choices, and we have the freedom of conscience, and the government has no business interfering with that conscience. The government will always do what is better for government to stay in power, and it will always do what will enhance its benefactors, whether they be Christian pastors or Silicon Valley billionaires. The government should stay out of people's minds and out of people's heads and out of people's pocketbooks and away from people's souls.
Judge, boy, this is another conversation I would love to have an extended discussion with you on, but I know you're a very busy man, and you look like a busy man there with the cityscape in the back. So please share with us what you have coming up on your incredible show and give us a sneak preview before we go.
I have the great Colonel Douglas McGregor at noon today. I also have Max Blumenthal, Phil Giraldi, and Aaron Mate, but I will be asking Colonel McGregor about South Korea. There are 35,000 American troops there. Should this character decide another martial law declaration, I will be asking him about Ukraine, and I will be asking him about how badly was the IDF getting beaten before Netanyahu said uncle under the guise of a truce.
Judge Andrew Napolitano, the host of Judging Freedom. Follow him wherever you get your podcasts. And Judge, thank you very much for your candidness and, as always, your defense of true North liberty. Have a wonderful day.
Pleasure. Right back at you, Austin.
Thank you. That's Judge Andrew Napolitano. We're speaking to James Lindsay up next. Don't go away. We'll be right back to talk about Christian nationalism, to talk about his prank, talk about his hoax. Is he being honest, or is it being a little deceitful? It is a hoax, after all, a little bit of a prank, but maybe it's in good spirits. Spirits? No such thing. We'll talk about that when we get back on the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that at the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian, and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
if I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors, what would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? So you can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
It's me, you, anyone that wants to be.
There is no typical firefighter.
Do you hate the deep state? Do you reject the Antichrist in all his ways? Do you believe that aliens controlled LBJ to assassinate John F. Kennedy? Did you know that the shot can put chemicals in you that will make you more sensitive to 5G? Do you love America? Do you want more freedom? Do you like smoking hot red-headed libertarians? Then the AP for Liberty shop is for you! Check out all the awesome new merch and have a happy new year! Fight the deep state, reject the Antichrist! Visit AP for Liberty shop and get your patriotic merchandise now, or the deep state wins! Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show. We're on the For Liberty Network. That's right, forlibertynetwork.com. That's where you can watch 3 shows on this network. Wake Up America show is in the mornings, 7 to 9 a.m., but 7 to 9 p.m., Tuesdays and Thursdays, that's Culturama. Thursday nights, we like to party with the Liberty Tonight boys from 9 to 11 p.m. Central Time. So set your calendars. Make sure that you know that there are 3 shows on the For Liberty Network. You can find us all at forlibertynetwork.com. That's the easiest place to hit me up. But if you're watching us live on rumble.com right now, we're glad to have you here. Click the like button. Follow the channel so that you can hear more conversations like this. He got famous for publishing pieces of Mein Kampf in leftist periodicals. They bought it hook, line, and sinker. Now he's done the same to the right. He's published pieces of the Communist Manifesto in right-wing conservative periodical, one, and now he's getting flamed up good from the right on it. Let's talk and hear his views on this directly. His name's James Lindsay, and he's joining us live on the phone right now. Good morning, James, and welcome to the Wake Up America show. How are you today?
I am great, thank you.
James, you're suffering the slings and arrows of outrageous fortunes. I mean, you did stir it up. I think people kind of understand the concept of what's happened here, but maybe if you want to put some flesh on the bones, you're getting a lot of heat right now for what you've done. Give us the Reader's Digest version of where you're at, what you did and, why you did it and what the reaction has been.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start just by saying outrageous fortune, slings of arrows, a lot of heat. This is hilarious. You mentioned when I did the thing to the left back in 2018, I did the series of academic papers to their peer-reviewed journals. One of them was a rewrite of Hitler's Mein Kampf. They're saying today, these right guys are saying the exact same stuff. I mean, this is just like a walk down memory lane for me, and it's really pretty funny. But what I did was I've been trying to criticize not the entire conservative movement, which I'm actually not only aligned with, but probably part of, and certainly not Christians, which I'm extremely supportive and sympathetic of. One of my key pieces of information that, like, people say, James, what do we do about all the crazy stuff happening in the country? And I'm going to give advice on stage. One of my key pieces is take your family to church. So it's not like I'm anti-Christian in any regard, but what I decided was that there were some problems there, and what I've been calling, for lack of a better term, the woke right, a segment of the far right that acts in woke ways. And I tried to criticize it, and I tried to explain it, and not only did I get mobbed, I'm actually getting canceled by these guys in the circles where I normally work. And I thought, well, I've been here before. I did this back in 2016 and 2017, which is what led us to write the academic papers for the left back in the day. And so I thought maybe these people are ready to be hoaxed. Maybe they need to, see if they can filter out a rewrite of the Communist Manifesto that flatters their particular ideological point of view. And it turns out that it's not like it's peer reviewed, but I submitted it to one of their leading magazines, and the magazine accepted and published it with almost no edits. And here we are.
Okay. I think it makes sense. I mean, some people are calling you out. I mean, they're being dishonest, but I mean, it is a hoax. It's kind of the point is to sort of play a prank on people. James, there's a man by the name of Mike Cernovich, and he says you're not being honest. He says that you rewrote so many of the passages that, and when you were confronted to this evidence, that you did a Mott and Bailey, that you retreated to a new claim, but that your initial headline essentially says that that you're kind of walking back this idea that you published parts of the Communist Manifesto, the things that you changed that were so underlining as to be a legitimate critique of liberalism that they say. So what the Christian nationalists are saying is that they critique Christian liberals, and Marx was actually right about his critique of liberalism, which is, where I come from, the tradition of true liberalism and classical liberalism, that people like Carl Benjamin and, Sargon of Akkad and all of these right-wingers, they say they really don't believe in freedom, like the people like I believe in it. So in some ways, they're sort of proving you right. They're going out of their way to say, on one hand, that what you're doing was dishonest, and that Karl Marx, that you changed it so fundamentally that Karl Marx, but also it's also true to what Marx says, and he's also right. Seems a little confusing. I mean, seems at odds with they seem at odds with one another on the problem that they're facing here.
So back in 2018, when we were about to release the academic paper hoax, the Grievance Studies Affair, as it became called, when we were about to release that, we sat down, we met with Brett Weinstein and his wife. We didn't, had very few friends in this fight at the time, but they happened to be two of them. And we went over to their house for dinner and told them ahead of the world by 3 or 4 days what we had done and what was coming. And what Brett Weinstein said to me on that day was, you know that you've hit the target when you start getting vicious criticism that's contradictory. In other words, they say one thing like you didn't actually rewrite the Mein Kampf or the Communist Manifesto, and it's actually Marx was right, and that's why this is okay. So when you've hit the point where they're scrambling for the right narrative to run to cover their butts, and they're saying both things at the same time, Brett Weinstein said, that's when you know you've hit the target. And I've seen that play out,
Oh, yeah. If you're not pissing someone off, you're probably not doing something important. But when it comes to the actual substance of what we're discussing here, you're calling the Christian nationalist movement in the movement, the nascent Christian nationalist movement on the right, you're calling them out for being blatant authoritarians. And they're agreeing with you. They are blatant authoritarians. They just don't like your tactics in calling them out.
Yeah, there are actually some people who've come out and said that, so what, that it's Marx's demagoguery, it's Marx's rhetoric. So what, that it's Marx's, they don't use the technical terminology because they don't know Marx very well, obviously, or they wouldn't have published this.
Yeah, most of them haven't read it.
Marx's conflict theory. What if it's his Marxist dialectical analysis? What if it's all the same operating system, which is, by the way, all I claimed? If Cernovich had bothered to read the 2,000-word essay I wrote explaining myself, where I said, no, they did not publish the Communist Manifesto. No, they did not publish communism qua communism. They did the same mistake the fascists made, which was to pick up the tools of communism, the operating system, and then run with it for their own fixed conclusions, as literally Adolf Hitler phrased it in Mein Kampf, which I've also obviously read. And if he had bothered to read that, he wouldn't be able to make the idiotic criticisms that he's doing. But here's the stuff that they're saying I rewrote. Yes, I did rewrite thematic elements to change the targets. Marx targeted the bourgeoisie and championed the proletariat. I changed bourgeoisie to classical liberalism and what they call the post-war liberal consensus. And then I changed proletariat to new Christian right, which is some word they use for themselves. And of course, I had to massage the language to make it go with that, because when you talk about the liberals, when you talk about the bourgeoisie, you're talking about something very specific, which is a middle class. When you're talking about classical liberals, it's something different. The targets are different, so that had to change. But the first two paragraphs are so close that...
Right, you had to change Mein Kampf. you had to change Mein Kampf in a similar way in order to get in the leftist academics and the conservatives. We all praised you, we agreed with you, we clap you on the back, but now you're firing inside the tent. Now I could say
they defended me for that. I changed Mein Kampf way more.
Yeah, now I could say tactically, having been in politics proper for a number of years, that you could say the last 3 months before running up to the election, maybe not the best time to pick the fight, but maybe it is. Maybe it was the right time to have this discussion. I don't think a lot of right wingers are really ready for it, but it is time, because we're having this conversation on the right about what the MAGA movement really is and what the future of the right will be, and you sort of have these.
And who will get power?
Right. And when you hear, for example, Vivek Ramaswamy having a conversation versus someone like a Josh Hawley having a conversation, there's a very substantive difference between Christian nationalists and national conservatives and a Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon Musk, where you have, for example, Josh Hawley, he's my senator. He's very much of the national conservative bent, right? And probably would proudly define himself as a Christian nationalist. That guy voted to spend more money than Bernie Sanders, right? An avowed literal communist. And I see many on the right picking up the cudgels, the tools of Marxism, of socialism. It's okay. It's because really, what was National Socialism, James, but socialism for white people, right? They're trying to act like they haven't all been listening to Candace Owens for the last 5 years talk about why Nazis are leftists, and then they have the gall to pick up the tools of leftists and then criticize us for calling them out for saying, hey, listen, shits, the Nazis were just angry at the Marxists because they had an egalitarian view of society. The Nazis were like, yeah, we want all the same tools that the communists have, but also add anti-Semitism to it. And boy, there's plenty of that too, isn't there, James?
Oh yeah, that's not this particular wing, to my knowledge, of what I've been referring to broadly as the woke right. I don't think that the American Reformer guys are anti-Semitic. They might be Israel skeptical. That's fine. There's plenty of room for reasoned debate that doesn't actually dip into just ethnic hatred on that. So whatever. I've picked fights enough of that on the internet already. But yeah, this is the same mistakes that Adolf Hitler made, if that's how we wish to characterize them. And anybody who's read the first 3 or 4 chapters of Mein Kampf understands that, where in fact Hitler, I've been criticized for pointing this out, that Hitler argued that he fought with the Marxists and he fought with the Marxists. So he studied Marxism and he adopted their methods and he understood them and he used all of the Marxist tools to drive his own firm, fixed conclusions. And then he said, and then I realized what I needed to realize was that the Marxists were all Jews and that Jews are not Germans. And then he had, meaning folkish Germans, which is all of a sudden, people in place, as they say today in the Christian Nationalist movement, or blood and soil, as he said back in the Nazi movement. And all of a sudden, he had all the tools he needed to make the Nazi party. And it was the tools of Marxism, the demagoguery of Marxism, the conflict theory and dialectical analysis of Marxism, the socialist goals of Marxism, or the distributist goals where his outlet gets to determine how the goods and services and labor in society are distributed. And he took off and ran with it. And this is a direct parallel. And here we are at this moment where, I'm not sure that I believe fully in divine intervention, but I'm more convinced that it's possible after watching Trump not get shot in Butler, Pennsylvania than ever before.
Yes.
And we have this amazing moment where, against literally all odds and in a very strange series of events leading up to it, Donald Trump got elected over a visibly communist party that controlled most of the levers of power and is going to be our next president. And we have this opportunity, therefore, to fix America and get it back to its founding principles, get it back to the common sense realism underneath, get it back to the classical liberalism, if you want, Jefferson, Madison, back to John Locke before him, Thomas Reed before that. We have this opportunity, or we can get lured into a pit by people who either because they are desperate or because they're afraid or because they're power hungry. We have the perfect metaphor for this. We almost all, these guys definitely all grew up with it because J.R.R. Tolkien wrote it. This, for the people who've seen the movies of The Lord of the Rings or read the book, this is the moment where Boromir is looking at the Ring of Power from Sauron and saying it is a gift. And that's the power of the tactics of the evil of dialectical conflict theory from Marxism. It is a gift. That's the way that this movement sees it. And I wanted this exposed. I even started before the election because, like I said, I'm concerned that we're going to have a 3-month window here with a mad scramble to fill 4,000 to 5,000 appointees in power in the administration, and that I know these guys crave power, so they're going to get in there as fast and as many as they can, and they're going to use power exactly the way the left uses power, which is to multiply it by bringing in their own guys, boxing out all of their ideological enemies, which are always their nearest neighbors to their left, not the far left. They're going to use it to multiply their own strength, consolidate and build power, because that's what all wedge movements do. So I wanted to expose this wedge movement before it destroys our opportunity to save America.
I can see where you're going on this. I mean, you were always going to inflame those who are sympathetic to Christian nationalism. And I think that it is important, James, to recognize that they're not just unwittingly adopting many of them Marxist tactics. I had this old catchphrase that I used a couple of years ago, which is to say that many of them really are just Elizabeth Warren, but they go to church on Sunday, right? That there was really not a lot of distinction between many of these people, but at its heart, whether it's Marxism, whether it's dialecticalism, whether it's Hegelianism, whether it's wokeism, as it is to be understood, it's authoritarianism, very clearly authoritarianism, because they don't really believe in the concept of free will. At its base, they think that man is irredeemably fallen. And unlike my previous guest, I just had Judge Andrew Napolitano come on the show a few minutes before you, and I had him come on Christian nationalism. And he is a strict pre-Vatican II Catholic, skeptical of Pope Francis, hardcore libertarian. And he has nothing but scorn and ridicule to pour on the Christian nationalist movement because of their blatant authoritarianism. And this is a man who sits down at the cocktail parties with them in Washington, D.C. and New York, and here's what they have to say. Many of them his fellow Catholics who have adopted these tenets and purposes, and sometimes you will even see a split between Protestant, the reformers, who will say that, Catholics can't be Christian nationalists because Christian nationalism was explicitly breaking with the church. And you see them eating each other alive, much less attacking someone like you, who they just dismiss because you're an atheist. They can't dismiss someone like Judge Napolitano quite as easily. They won't engage as easily with his arguments. But of course, they commit to character attacks. They do become very Lenin-esque in the sense that they commit to the politics of personal destruction, character destruction. We've seen many of them also do the same thing with the education reformer that we know, Corey DeAngelis, who I know you're on the opposite sides of the school choice thing, but that's neither here nor there. But at the end of the day, they want to cancel you now, James Lindsay, right? Because you are calling out what appears to me, at least, not being, fighting in this fight or just, commenting and opining on it. It appears to me as if at its base, you are attacking those who claim that there are no individual rights, that our God is your master, and we will have the laws of the Bible be the laws of the land, not the laws that are written by men, the Constitution. We will not protect individual rights. It's the government and the state above the individual. And you and I, and more liberal, classical liberal types people, of course, we fundamentally reject this. Is that at its heart really what you're calling out, James? Because that's at least what it appears to me.
Yeah, that's basically it. It's kind of funny, just to point out, there's so much you said, but just to point on one of the topics you raised where, they can't listen to me because I'm not even technically an atheist. I am quite literally an agnostic for people who care about those split hairs. But they say, you can't learn from James. He's an atheist. This is one of the big things that they're criticizing me for now. James is an atheist. They say that I'm an avowed atheist, which is preposterous and in direct opposition to everything I've said for 7 or 8 years. But I'm an avowed atheist, so you can't listen to me. And there was at one point, this is one of my favorite scenes from this entire movement, where William Wolf is the guy's name, was sitting there doing a video, explaining in the video why you can't get your ideas from atheists. And behind him was my book, Cynical Theories, plainly visible on the camera. And it's like, you got your ideas from me, you fool. And it turns out that ideas are ideas. I was talking with a Christian pastor friend of mine last night, and I said, if any truth is God's truth, then all truth is God's truth. So if somebody tells a truth and you believe that it's God's truth, then it's all God's truth. It doesn't matter what the source of truth is. And that was actually, fundamentally, it is a Christian belief that often gets fallen by the wayside for piety, but it is a fundamentally classically liberal belief, which is, let's find out what's actually true. Let's keep the true and not worry that much about about which guy said it. We don't have to make idols of people and take all their ideas because they had one good idea. So we take the good idea and we compare that with other people and let people argue it out, let people debate it out, and we take violence off the table to the greatest degree possible. That's the whole formula. Unfortunately, these fellas, earlier you were talking about how, Cernovich is saying and Carl Benjamin is saying stuff like, that Marx had good critiques of liberalism. These guys, first, don't even understand liberalism. They get it all wrong. They mix in French romanticism and they mix in German idealism and forget that the American tradition is common sense realism, not idealism, not romanticism. It's a completely metaphysically different philosophical system. So they don't even understand liberalism. And then they don't understand Marx's critique of liberalism. Yes, Marx went and talked about how it tears up the social bonds and all this, talking about how it dissolves a feudal order, which wasn't exactly a great order, by the way. It dissolves all those things. But that's like the ripples on top of the lake. Underneath is where all the water is, right? And where the water is what Marx was saying was that once private property comes onto the scene with slavery, way back in the history of man, once that happens, everything in history is the war between classes. It's all class antagonism and class conflict. That's the opening part of the Communist Manifesto, chapter 1. That's what it's all about. And what he said, the real criticism of capitalism, not liberalism, but we can, I guess, say they're close together. His criticism of capitalism is, in fact, not at all those ripples on the lake that it tears apart social. That's the sales pitch to get people aggrieved. That's the agitprop, as Lenin would call it, to get people upset. The real criticism is that the feudal system had a hierarchy, and then the capitalist system came along and made a new hierarchy that's not socialist. That's the real criticism. So Marx did not have a good criticism of liberalism at all. They haven't read or understood Marx.
But they say that, but Carl Benjamin, he is, widely touted as a right-wing voice who has a lot of followers. He was speaking to you directly on X, he was responding to Konstantin Kishin, who agrees with you. But Carl Benjamin said, I don't know if this makes me woke right, but Marx's critique of liberalism was correct and is widely accepted by philosophers. The problem with Marx was that his solutions are even worse than the damage that liberalism did to social relations. Now, he did say a couple of tweets later that he should have been maybe more cautious in his framing, but he says that Marx is... Yes, he was quite clearly Marx's critique of liberalism is wrong and definitely not widely accepted by philosophers, and thus those philosophers are communists. But I do want you to respond to that, what Carl Benjamin is saying here, because, it seems as if they're spinning in circles, saying that you're wrong and you're terrible and you're a bad person and you're an atheist and you're a former leftist, but also Karl Marx was right. Am I summating this correctly?
You are. It's actually pretty shocking to watch it play out. We were having, dinner the night before we released it, and my colleagues and I we were discussing what might happen, and this is exactly what we thought would probably happen. So it's kind of, like I said, this is all funny for me, but what Carl Benjamin said is incorrect. That's why he has to walk it back and be more careful later. Karl Marx's analysis of liberalism, as I already said, is not correct. He did say many true things, but he didn't say them correctly. So you can say true things incorrectly to mislead someone, if it was a fact check, not true, not false, misleading. And what it is that Karl Marx starts with his conclusion first, and everything he does is warped around his conclusion. It's like if you went to the doctor and the doctor has decided that you have a psychiatric illness, and he just starts twisting every single thing to make it seem like it's evidence of your psychiatric illness that he decided you had before you opened the door. Karl Marx decided that man's essential true nature is socialist, and that the true correct organization for society is socialism that leads on to communism. And so every analysis that he has is just him trying to bend the system to that. So his analysis, his criticism of liberalism, or capitalism actually, is that it set up a new hierarchy that's even subtle and even more sinister and even more exploitative than feudalism was. That's his actual criticism. And then The problem with that is that it's not socialist. Socialism is supposed to be perfectly egalitarian as managed by an oppressive dictatorial state, even in Marx's own description. So it's not just that he had a bad prescription, which is what Karl said. It's that he has a bad prescription following a intentionally bad diagnosis. Karl Marx was letting the cart lead the horse, and then he comes up with his prescriptions, which in fact, yes, Carl Benjamin is right that those prescriptions were exactly the wrong thing to do for the circumstance that he was describing. But in the process of giving his diagnosis, what Karl Marx actually does is he pulls out a lot of true facts that are, as Lenin would phrase it, as the word came to be later, agitprop, agitation and propaganda. The goal is to agitate people into being dissatisfied with their lives. So you say, you used to have it great. You used to have all these, various family relations. You used to have all these different, economic relations. You used to be the master of your own artisan crafts, and all that's gone. You used to be able to, work together on the land. All that's gone because of capitalism came and stole it from you.
I hear that a lot from right wingers these days, to be quite honest, James. But
you should read the second chapter, because the second chapter of the Communist Manifesto says the communist plan is to confiscate all of it.
No, trust me, James. I have been documenting this for a while. There's a commercial that I produced for this show that plays of Ronald Reagan talking about his liberalism and his libertarianism, and in between it are quotes from men like Yoram Hazony and Marco Rubio, who say things like the free market capitalism and the national interest are not aligned, that it's time for them to break relations between the Christian nationalists and right-wingers. It's time for them to break relationships with people like ourselves, who are the more the market, closer to the market. They call us fiscal conservatives in the 80s, right? I would call us perhaps maybe more libertarians or classical liberals in the modern age, but that they want to break relations with us. They've been telling us for years now, the past several years, that they don't want anything to do with us. I will say, though, that I was happy to see that they did invite Vivek Ramaswamy to the National Conservatism Conference last year, and he gave a rousing speech against things like tariffs, against things like more regulations, punishing our enemies in the way that the left does. But I want to say this last thing here, and this is more of a question, one secularist to another. Do you think that a big part of the problem in this, James, is that I see everybody wants to own everybody online, right? We all are just trying to get the most amount of likes. We're kind of in the casino of X or wherever we're at on social media, where the likes and the hearts, and whoever's the most popular wins the argument with the level of hearts, or who gets ratioed underneath their post. But do you think that a big part of the problem for people who actually care about the real discussions here of what we're talking about, the underlying questions, James, do you think that part of the problem of why we're talking past each other is because they really are coming from a metaphysical standpoint, and our view is more materialist, right? Like it is true. Truth is true. Objective truth is real, and it's true no matter who says it. It doesn't matter if you're an atheist saying it, right? Even the Christians would say, well, even the devil can quote scripture, right? And that is their metaphysical way of suggesting that true is true, no matter who says it. Even the devil can quote scripture. But, should we sort of, in order to bring over rather than sort of attack and own, and I listen, I'm guilty as anybody of that sin. I do it all the time, and maybe I should do better at this, but should we kind of do more to try and understand their metaphysical, supernatural, right, mystical worldview in order to have more productive conversations about these things? You started the conversation. Can we now educate some of these people who are actually curious about these underlying ideas? Maybe some of them might actually read the Communist Manifesto if we don't just sort of, slice every throat. We'll leave a few prisoners, perhaps, James. What do you say about that as we wrap up our conversation?
My idea all along has been to rescue as many of these people from this predictable mistake as possible. That's in the write-up I gave about this particular prank. I didn't say rescue people from what I said. This is a mistake. It's a distraction. We shouldn't be making it. I've always hoped we could just pull people back from the fear and despair that drives them to this kind of extremism, this radicalism, the feeling that there's no solution within the Constitution. So now it's time to break the Constitution. I think that's wrong. I want to pull these people back. And I started off for a very long time with just regular criticisms, regular descriptions. This is a problem. This is a problem. Trying to tell people what's going on. My primary role in life is an educator, unfortunately, maybe. And it didn't work. I started to get attacked rather than anything else. And so then people said, well, you don't have any examples. So I started giving people examples. And then that, of course, means you're calling somebody out. So then they get very mad. I wasn't calling people out. I was giving people examples. which is what you do when you're trying to educate. And that it all kind of spiraled in the way that social media always does. And like I said at the beginning of our conversation, I tried the route of criticism, explanation, and so on. I tried to invite people back from the ledge. I had long conversations with many individuals trying to pull them back from this ledge, and it only drove them further because of their ideological possession. And so you finally hit a point, and I'm hoping it's early enough in this trend to where it nips it somewhat in the bud. You finally hit a point where, look, they don't want conversation. So what you have to do is something else. So I did something literally, and I've a literal small prank to gain attention to the question and to throw some color on it. And the color happens to be the Communist Manifesto and its conflict theory, demagoguery, and dialectical analysis being willfully picked up. And I'll comment that the American Reformer has stood by this article. It's still up. It's no longer in the fake name Marcus Carlson that I used, which is supposed to be a spin on Karl Marx. It's now up in my name on American Reformer, and they've added an editor's note at the end. And the editor's note says in its own words that what is published there is reflective of their thought. It is, they said, a reasonable summary. This is the exact quote, a reasonable summary of some new right ideas. So they've not only kept the article and stood by it, they've said that they agree with it. So it's not just the demagoguery and the rhetoric, but it is. It's also the conflict theory, the us versus them, that we're oppressed and they are oppressors, and we're going to band together to overthrow them and take the means of power. And that's extremely concerning. I don't think this is the moment or the move that the conservative movement should be making in this moment. I very much worry about people at the statements that you made, like Marco Rubio's, and not just that we should split from one another. Notice I'm the one being called divisive when they're going around saying we should separate. But this idea that what we need to do in terms of, aligning our incentives is to start putting state controls on how companies are to do business. Why? Right. The only control that the state has any interest in putting on any business would be to do with antitrust laws and to do with cartel behavior.
No, I agree. And they're looking at they want to put the military on the streets. And despite saying Obama was going to put us all in FEMA camps, I mean, it was all posse comitatus then, and now it's we're going to take the hand of government. We're going to take the ring, the one true ring, and we will wield it for ourselves. James Lindsay, anything else real quick that you want to say as we wrap this up, or plug? Final word before we let you go.
I'll just say what my mom always said when I was growing up. Wrong is wrong, right? And so if our side, if that's what this is, if that's how we want to see it, we're going to be very dichotomous and say our side versus their side, the left versus the right. If the right, as it calls itself, has a problem, it is our responsibility and duty to call it out and try to make it better. It is not an act of hate. It's not an act of malice. It's not duplicitous, it's not divisive, it's responsibility. It's like if you had a brother who's like a heroin addict, you've got to intervene at some point and try to help. Okay. You're not hurting the person. So wrong is wrong. And if we're wrong on our side, we've got to clean it up. Yeah, no, I agree. I like to, whenever I find that I'm wrong about something, James, it's even though it's upsetting and it's embarrassing, I try and find the silver lining and say, hey, I learned something today. At least I learned something, right? And I'm capable of changing my mind. Most people aren't. James, thank you very much for your time. You can be followed over on X at Conceptual James. Thanks for getting up so early. We're grateful for your contributions and the generosity of your time. Hopefully you'll come back and join us again sometime. Have a great day. You too. Thanks.
Thanks very much. What do you guys think of James Lindsay? I know many are going to be perhaps disappointed about the time that we managed to spend. They're going to be like, oh, Austin, you get to say this, you didn't get to say that. Well, first of all, camera one died. I don't know what happened there. There's always some problem. Camera two is here, but it's good because I get a chance to sell my stuff. Liberal Tears mugs. Founding Flavors coffee exclusively at forlibertyshop.com. You can't get Founding Flavors coffee anywhere else. You can only get it at forlibertyshop.com. If you haven't checked out forlibertyshop.com, why? What's wrong with you? There's so much amazing stuff over at forlibertyshop.com. Elon Musk's dark MAGA hat, Javier Milei's Afuera stocking, his sneakers, We the People earrings, a George Washington cutting board that my wife doth covet, AR-15 pillows. We've got Cyber Monday deals still running, guys. You can save so much money by shopping at Allstate. No, forlibertyshop.com. Thanks so much. Have a great day. And we'll see you guys here right back here again tomorrow, hopefully with camera one working, on the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. Ago,
and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
Is the outdoor of your home about as exciting as a library? Then spice it up and unbore your space with our custom metal signs. Crafted with love and a bit of libertarian magic, you can customize your own metal sign at ap4libertyshop.com. So head to ap4libertyshop.com, customize your own metal sign today.
Welcome to a world of vocal discovery at Peterson Voice Studio. I'm Justin Peterson, here to guide your musical journey. Envision a place where your voice reaches new heights, where every note tells a story. We embrace all singers, from the enthusiastic shower vocalists to aspiring stars, ensuring each voice finds its unique rhythm and tone. Are you ready to elevate your voice? Visit petersonvoicestudio.com and sign up for
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at ap4libertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit ap4libertyshop.com. With all of the great liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit ap4libertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.